All right, Rico. This is super fun, man. I like these characters. I like that you added all these other animals into it. Super fun. Um, yeah, this is awesome. I really like what's going on here. Let's get into just a few things that I was thinking when I saw this. A few tips, things I think we could adjust. The first one that I noticed right off the bat is your wolf's sword. So I'm assuming that, he's got this belt and the sword goes through the belt, okay, and out. So we need to continue that sword through at least this spot right here. We'd see a little bit of that sword right here. Okay. So I would just make sure that that continues through so it kind of makes more sense of where it's coming from. Because right now, without this, it's almost like it's going here and then cutting through this part of his clothing and coming out that way. So a little indication of the sword right here will make it feel like it's going through this belt and out. I'd also maybe finish off some of these lines right here. Some of them, it's almost like you left open a little bit. So I just make sure that those get finished through. Let's see. I'm also wondering if we could push some of these expressions. This expression's super fun. It's pretty pushed, but I'm wondering if we could even come more on some of these and really lean into it. I don't know, that might be too much. There's a few other of these characters I think we can push their expressions, but the Wolf's is probably good. I like what's going on there. The other thing that I was thinking, and this goes for all of them, is I think we should, especially with this style you're going for, it might be fun to lean into a little bit more expressive line work. You're using a pretty fun textured brush, which I really like, and some of your characters, you have a nice variation of line work, right? Like this bunny's ears, you got a lot of thick to thin, but I think it'd be nice if you'd lean into that a little more. So like maybe on him, we get some line work. And then maybe these are super thin. But then we go thick in here. Thick around here. Okay. Yeah, and just kind of find places that you can have some thick, some thin, and kind of come up with a system maybe. For me, that system is normally like, okay, things that overlap or things that would have a shadow, those are things that get thick lines, right? Things that, maybe folds get thinner lines. Materials like this belt would maybe get some thinner lines. Maybe this rope gets some thick lines. I think especially up here in the face, we can get some line variation. It's super fun also to have line variation in the fur. I think it adds a little bit nice effect to it. You could even think about having some ink, inking like this too. You could think about something like that. That might be fun for this kind of style you're going for. It's like this Japanese samurai story. So maybe leaning into some of that comic book inky lines could be fun, or the traditional Japanese inking. I would look at some of that reference of like traditional Japanese artwork and see how they're using the brush work. See if you can maybe get that in this somehow, right? And just have some variation with some thick to thins. Maybe it gets thick down as it comes to the bottom here. Right, and then it comes thick here. Can kind of vary that line a little bit. Yeah, just look for ways to maybe incorporate that, okay, in all of your characters. See how you can adjust the line weight. Looking at this guy right here, the first thing I notice is the pattern on his shirt. If you look at everybody else in your lineup, all of their clothing goes with the form of their body. So you see how you have, you know, lines like this, and it's giving hints of a 3D figure underneath. And this guy's is very flat, okay? It's not giving any indication of form. Now, there's nothing wrong with this style, having a flat pattern. However, if you're gonna have a flat pattern, everybody should have flat patterns, okay? So since you have the majority of people with patterns that are wrapping around, I would make sure his wraps around as well. So maybe this plaid, you know, you got to kind of think, okay, what's the structure going on underneath here, right? And maybe it wraps like that, right? And just make sure, you know, the whole thing, and you can style that however you want, but make sure that it's doing the same thing as the other outfits. When creating a world, it's important that you set rules and everybody follows those rules. So if clothing has flat patterns, everybody has flat patterns as clothing. If characters' clothing patterns wrap around their form, then it wraps around. So just make sure you're picking a rule and sticking with it. I also wonder if we could maybe adjust his expression and where this eye lines up. It kind of touches. I wonder if we could maybe spread that out a little bit so it's a little bit less of a tangent. Maybe we could even push the expression a little bit. So if you see, see that out here, see how that's not touching the side right there? And the expression's pushed a little bit. I think that would help. I think it reads a little bit better. Let's see what else. I think that maybe we're getting a tangent right here with the ear and the cloth. See how the ear, the front of the ear and the cloth both touch the same line? We kind of talked about this last week in the lecture. Got to make sure that different parts of the body and forms are separated by something. So I think if we want to have the ear here, we got to adjust maybe where it's at a little bit. So maybe it's like that. And then that way this can kind of just, live however we want. Over here you kind of have comes out like this. That way these things right here are separated. Even with this, see how this strap goes into that ear? See this whole part right here, it flattens out your drawing. So making sure that all of this kind of has some kind of overlap is going to give your drawing more dimension. Make it more readable. So see, I'm creating just T's almost, the T method, so things don't all line up to one point. So watch that on a few. There's a few other areas that kind of do that. I would just make sure you watch that. Like this right here. Make sure this doesn't line up with that fold. Make sure there's plenty of separation right there. I'd also maybe try and, on a few of them, like the polar bear and him, I'd maybe have a few more indications of folds. Since this feels so flat, I'd like to kind of know where his arms are underneath, what exactly is going on. So maybe there's, some more folds in that. Or for looking at the polar bear, clearly his arm's coming this way. So maybe we have some more folds right here. That way it's just kind of, it just gives us more of a hint of what's going on underneath the clothing. All right, I understand this is kind of like a lot of these are baggy and stuff, but it's still important that these folds indicate, what's going on. This is another sense of a tangent. I would make sure that those don't touch. So either have this come up more and this come out, or you can have, the way you have it up here on the shoulder, I would move it a little bit that way. That way this doesn't get confusing. This also gets confusing right here a little bit. So I'd make sure that separates. And same thing on his eye over here. I'd see if we can pull that out a little bit. Because his nose is going to be, the way that the bear's nose is going to come, it's going to come in front of that eye. So we want to make sure that makes sense. That the viewer can understand that. Yeah, there we go. What else? These are super fun. I think one big thing too I was thinking of is kind of thinking about your ground plane. So with this middle guy right here, your main fox or wolf character, you've kind of set a ground plane with his feet. So if we go like this, same with the ox, you've set this ground plane. So now we need to make sure that people are on that ground plane, or if they're behind it, they're clearly behind it. So for example, your polar bear, this polar bear kind of floating, right? The way her legs are, she's on a different ground plane. She's on something like this. So we need to bring her down a bit. Okay, make sure that her feet line up on this ground plane. I would almost make all of them somewhat similar to the ox or this bunny right here. This bunny's feet feel really good on the ground plane. These two right here are the ones that are mostly feel like they're floating. So make sure you bring them down onto that ground plane. And yeah, I think that's all I got for you. It's super fun, man, though. I love it. Can't wait to see more. Can't wait to see how these characters work in a turnaround and when you start posing them and start getting into some story moments. So just fix a few of those things. Think about maybe line work a little bit more and how you can give it a little bit extra something. And yeah, I'll see you at the lecture.